And we welcome you in live to Wings Etc. in Cape Girardeau. It is the Red Hawks Coaches Show, and it will be our first Coaches Show for basketball. So head coach Brad Korn is here. We will talk Red Hawks hoops coming off the big victory in Kansas City over the Roos on Saturday. Invite you to come out to Wings Etc. Plenty of room here. You get an opportunity to interact with the coach and talk Red Hawks basketball. We will be here every Monday during basketball season, and I believe we're here again next week. Or are we in Jackson? Jackson. We'll be in Jackson next week. So we'll be celebrating a Jackson High School football state championship, most likely, next Monday at Wings Etc. in Jackson. Let's talk it over. Let's introduce Red Hawks head coach Brad Korn, first Coach's Show. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing well. Everybody's always good after a win.
Well, what was that like for you? And I asked you during our post-game broadcast about what your emotions were getting on the bus, riding to the arena, which you've done hundreds of times as an assistant coach and as a player. But it's the first time you've gotten on a bus, driven to an arena where you were the head coach of the team at the Division I level. What were your emotions just getting on the bus, riding over, and going into the locker room?
I actually was more nervous the day before just because it's like the climate, the environment that we're in now is like anytime your phone rings, you're just worried that you're going to get shut down. So it's like, man, I just want to get to the bus. I just want to get on the bus because once this bus starts rolling, that means we're going to play. So I just was more nervous about just actually getting to that moment so we could play. You know, I had told you after the game, our guys just deserved to play. It was a rough week last week just from the highs and the lows of the testing and everything else going on. It just was just a tough week emotionally, you know, just because you think you're going to play, then you're not, then you are, then you're not, and then another team, Northern Colorado, dropped out because they tested positive. So it's just all those unanswered questions, and so it just was just an emotionally draining week. And so to finally get there and then to play the way that we played, you know, as we said afterwards, just the resiliency that the guys showed, the togetherness, the toughness, were all things that we tried to implement going into that game, and I thought we did it for the most part. There's obviously areas you got to improve on, but I think for the most part they played exactly how we thought we could, and now we got to take a step forward again and continue to get better.
Well, the teams in the tournament, and it was the Negro Leagues Museum Tip-Off Classic, and Northern Colorado was supposed to play. You were supposed to play them Friday. They had COVID issues and had to pull out. The host school, Avila University, had some positive tests. They had to pull out, but they still hosted the event. So you're fortunate just to be able to play with two teams, including the school, hosting the event that had COVID.
Yeah, it was, again, there were so many phone calls. The head coach at Kansas City, Billy Donlin, had called me. I got a phone call one night at 9:45 saying that Northern Colorado was out on I believe that was maybe a Tuesday night. And so it's like, oh, boy, here we go. You know, and so it's just some information you have to give the guys, but other information you keep for yourself. And so it's like, as you know, now as a head coach, there's some information you don't give out to other people. So it's like you're keeping it all in, and I'm just sitting there nervous and worried because how do you keep the guys together and keep them moving forward and keep believing in practice if you're not playing in games? So that was why it just was so important, I thought, for us to just hit the floor and see what it was, to play somebody different, to get some good film. Because we've only had, I think it's ended up being 6 or 7 practices of 10 players, you know, and so you're doing 4-on-4 and you're doing 3-on-3. It was like, well, you know, Nate Johnson and Nolan Taylor are getting every single rep as the 5s in practice, and so it's just you need to play some games at some point. So I just was thrilled that we were able to have that opportunity.
Now, normally, if you are down in numbers, sometimes you can have a manager come out there and represent a body. With managers not around, I mean, with the way the protocol is set up, can you still do that if you're under 10 players?
Yeah, we've used Coach Pickens, which we all know he can still.
Well, he's put out dunk videos on Twitter all the time. Yeah, we know that.
And even last year at K-State, I was in practice myself, so I'll get out there a little bit every now and again. Just got to be careful because it's one of those deals like you get out there, you better perform, or else they have ammo against you for the rest of the.
Oh, they'll kill you, right?
Oh, yeah. So it's pick and choose your spots, you know. But yeah, we've used Coach Pick. We've used our graduate assistant, Colin Jasper, in practice, and so you just try to do the best that you can, especially in walkthroughs too. And and every year you have some injuries, and so you've got some of those guys out as well. So necessarily hasn't been because of 10 players because of COVID. You know, there's other factors that play into that. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially when you're going to put through a practice plan and you're like, oh well. one day we did this, and then 5 minutes before you get, no, that guy can't practice today. And it's like, well, now you got to change your practice plan on the fly a little bit and go with what you got. But it's been a challenge. It's been unique, but I think everybody from the top down has been totally bought in, and they love the game and love to play, and so that makes it a lot easier as well.
You can join us here at Wings Etc. Still plenty of time. Join us for lunch. Their award-winning jumbo wings, their outstanding menu. And when you think Wings Etc., you certainly think chicken. You certainly think wings. You got to check out their extensive burger menu. It is outstanding here at Wings Etc. Still plenty of time for you to come out, join us for lunch, dine in, or carry out. You choose. They'll have your order waiting for you if you would like to, but the dining room is open. Coach Brad Korn joining us. It's our inaugural basketball coaches show. Explain to the fans what the COVID protocol is for you, because you guys are getting to coaches, players, everyone's getting tested multiple times a week, right?
Yeah. So once we shifted into our playing season where the games start and practices, the official practices did start, we were testing. Now we're testing 3 times a week. So we just got tested again this morning. So our trainer and our docs, Miss Amanda Martin, they've done a phenomenal job of keeping us healthy, and it's so fluid. It changes hourly and daily. So we're just in the process right now of getting tested. We practice until we get those results, and fortunately we've been pretty good, pretty clean to this point, pretty healthy. So hopefully that continues. But it's just a constant. Every single day, it just seems like, okay, there could be a new adventure. And so the more people, the more communication you have, the better. But it's ever-changing.
So I know they've got multiple types of COVID tests.
Yeah.
The less intrusive is the saliva test.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's not the one you guys have to deal with. You've got to deal with the long Q-tip that goes all the way into your frontal lobe, right?
Sometimes it does feel like that, yeah. Some tests are more pleasant than others. This morning wasn't too bad, but I also have had one where my eyes have been watering for the 10 minutes after. So it's just, it kind of all depends. And then you mix in a couple rapid tests, which actually is a little bit bigger, thicker, if you will. So it kind of depends. But I think, by the time that you've gone through it all, and we know that this is what it is to stay healthy, and that's what it takes for us to be able to participate in a healthy environment. We're willing to do that. And again, the commitment that the administration has made to it, and our players and the medical staff and Miss Amanda, it's been as fluid as it can be from that standpoint.
Yeah, Amanda Martin, outstanding trainer for SEMO. You take a test, then as a coaching staff, or at least as athletic administration, you wait for the results. So say you take a test this morning, when do you find out the results of those tests?
It depends on which test it is. So if it's just the regular PCR test, it normally takes about a day and a half, depending upon maybe 2 days. But if it's a rapid test, we're able to find out within 30 to an hour. So it just kind of depends on what's available. There's been, obviously with the recent spike across the country, there's been shortages here and there. And so again, sound like a broken record, but a testament to our medical staff to be able to secure some tests. So sometimes it just changes to whether that's a rapid or the PCR. So that determines the time frame in between each.
Well, I think very famously, Nick Saban, several weeks back, not his latest positive test, the head coach of Alabama football, tested positive, but he was asymptomatic. So he had multiple follow-up tests, and they were all negative, so he was able to go and coach against Georgia. Have you had to deal with any of that? Maybe a positive and then follow-up tests are negative? What's the protocol there?
Yeah, we actually have exactly the situation that you described. We had a positive. A person was feeling totally fine, asymptomatic, and so then we followed up with some more testing, and then he came back negative just like his did, and so we were able to go. But in that meantime, we paused. And so we've taken since August, it's been in the first week of school, we've had, I believe it's been 4 pauses in activities. Some of them have lasted 1 day, some have lasted 4 days. So it just kind of all depends. And again, it's when you get those test results back, it's like, okay, hey, everyone's good to go, you can practice. So we took a pause. We didn't practice Sunday, Monday, and then we practiced late Tuesday night because we got a test result back. And then we came right back and practiced early Wednesday morning, so essentially 2-a-days. Then we practiced again Thursday morning before we headed out to KC. So it was all those emotions that we talked about beforehand. It's like, are we even going to get to play? Are we even ready to play? Because now you go from a 3 days off to practice, and of course those practices aren't great because you just had 3 days off. And so it's like, well, we haven't practiced, and now we're supposed to go play. What are we going to look like? So it was all those kind of emotions, but at the end of the day, it was like, you know what? No matter what we look like, these kids deserve to go compete and to play the game that they love, and they're safe and they're healthy, and so let's go do it.
I guess one positive, if anyone does test positive and they are over it, they've then got the antibodies. Do they then get to opt out of the testing because they've already had it?
Yeah, you're good. If you've been tested positive, you've been cleared by the docs to come back, so there's still protocols that you have to adhere to in order to return to play. So as long as you check all those boxes, you no longer have to test for the remainder of this season.
So you knock off Kansas City 71-66, and let's talk about Kansas City for a second, because this is a team, the last 7 years they've competed in the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference. Prior to that, they were in the Summit League. Well, they've jumped back into the Summit League, so they'll be in the Summit this year. Last year, they were a 16-win program, just like SIU. SIU went 16-16. The Roos went 16-14, had a winning record, and I think finished fourth in their conference, the Western Athletic Conference. This is a team that has been playing well under Coach Billy Donlin.
Yeah, and Coach Donlin does a great job. Before KC, obviously assistant at Michigan, assistant at Northwestern, and before that, head coach at Wright State. And they won 20 games over there at Wright State. He did a phenomenal job there. So he's a tough, defensive-minded coach, does a great job with his program. And the funny thing about this year is, like, so everybody's years and you change over, and so especially these early games, you're watching film from last year. So, well, some of those players aren't there, and they started off not so well last year, and then they got it going. They're kind of two different teams last year. So you go from last year, two different type of teams, to this year to not really having much on them initially, and obviously new faces for them as well. And the games that they had played before, Greenville, and you score 150 points. Well, you're not getting much off of that film either. So you go into it a little bit unknown, but obviously knowing and respecting Coach Donlin and what they do, you knew it was going to be a tough tough game, and for us to be able to shoot the basketball the way that we did and have the efficiency, except for the free throw line, to be able to have the efficiency that we did, I was really proud of our guys for that, because he does a great job defensively. It's so hard to run your actions.
Now, when you talk about Greenville University, for those who don't know, they run that Grinnell system where they're what they want to do is get 100 shots up, and they play hard, 5 guys for a minute, and they substitute like a hockey team. They'll bring in 5 new guys, and they play as hard as they can. They want to get 100 shots up. At least half of them have to be behind the arc. They want to force 32 turnovers, and they send 4 guys to the boards for offensive rebounds. It's a really weird system, but it works well at their level. So when people saw that, UMKC scored 138 points, I'm wondering if you're watching video, what you can kind of glean out of that, because you're never going to see a team at the D1 level play Greenville style of basketball. And I know SEMO fans saw Murray State scored 177 against Greenville yesterday. It's just it's a completely different deal. How much could you scout from watching that film? And then in their first game, the Roos, they beat Culver Stockton, an NAIA team, 105-35, a 70-point victory. Right. Could you do much scouting off of either of those games?
No. You just get familiar a little bit with the new faces and the personnel and kind of how they move and play a little bit. We actually watched the game against Grinnell on the way to Kansas City on Friday. So we watched a little bit of that, but we didn't even watch the second half just because of the style, and you're not going to get anything of that. And we actually could have played a game similar to that, and we just decided as a staff that it just wasn't going to be beneficial for our players and our program at that point. If we were going to go play, we wanted to play a game that's going to get us better and get us prepared for the OVC and really for the rest of our non-conference schedule.
So you look at what you did on the defensive end of the floor. I want to start there first. First of all, you forced 17 turnovers in the game. Tell me about your thoughts on the turnovers, and a stat you always want to win is points off turnovers. Because you can get turnovers, but what are you doing with the turnovers? You got 20 points off of the 17 turnovers. You outscore them points off turnovers 20-16. That ended up being big. You outscored them by 4 in points off turnovers. You win the game by 4.
Yeah, and I was looking at my phone to look at the text message, because right before I got in here, Coach Weber texted me, because they meant K-State plays KC tonight, and so he's watching the film, and I was worried about what he'd say, about our team, because he's a defensive-minded guy, and so is Coach Lowry over there. So he said, "I thought your defense was pretty solid." So for Coach Weber to text me that, as a coach, you always think it's not very good. We gave up way too many baskets in the second half, but I think that's because we got fatigued and a little bit tired, and obviously your mental's the first thing to go when you get tired. But all in all, like you said, you turned them over 17 times. And we converted on those turnovers. Now, we had a couple of our turnovers ourselves that weren't very good as far as dribbling an open floor and just making bad decisions. But when you put the totality of the game together, outside of the free throws, we've got to get better rebounding the basketball, obviously. But all in all, I was very pleased with the way that we played in a complete game. You know, we had some things late game. Our zone offense wasn't very good, but the dribbling late game, we got to get better at that. But again, to not play and to be a new coach, a new system, a new everything, and COVID, and you take all factors considered, and not having played a game before this one, I was really proud of the way that we finished.
Fans are stoked that the victory was the final analysis. Now, the talk of the first half had to be Nana Akenton. He was outstanding. He came in and looked like he hadn't missed a beat. Now, talk about the fact that he had not practiced as much as the other guys because he was coming back from protocol, right?
Well, he was injured, actually.
Okay, he was injured. Yeah. So he scores 16 first-half points, and nothing more thrilling. He throws up a 54-foot shot at the buzzer. And I looked at it. I mean, because you're talking 47 feet to half court, so 94-foot. He had to be at least, I'm saying, 7 feet behind. So I was saying it was about 54 feet. But he launched it, banked it in, and you said one of your assistant coaches said that's going in.
Yeah, it was actually Coach Pick. I thought it was Chris Harris during the game, but it actually was Coach Pick. I was walking off, and he's like, "Oh, that's good." And I'm looking, I'm watching, I'm like, "It's online." And then sure enough, boom, it goes in. So it was that was a good moment. But Nana's he was injured, so he had a little bit of injury. He missed a ton of practice, to be honest with you. I think he ended up practicing maybe 8 times out of our 30 that we had before the game, and he just recently had come back. You know, he just had been cleared to go a couple practices prior to the game. So it was one of those situations. I talked to him before the game and just said, "Hey, love everything that you do, how you play. This is not an indictment on your game or anything like that." I didn't want to send a message to the guys that if you don't practice, you still get to start and play. Like, we still have to hold value to practice. And so that was the reasoning behind that. It had nothing to do with his ability or how hard he's played or anything else other than he just hadn't practiced much. And so I didn't think it was fair to him to just throw him to the fire, and then he ends up playing 32 minutes anyway. So what do I know? But again, he played so well, and he obviously got gassed in the second half. But he had a great attitude, and we talked about it after the game. I actually talked about it the night before when we met with the team. Just very honest with the guys and told them the exact same thing. And the way that he handled that, and he just said, "Hey, Coach, I'm not worried about that. I just want to win." And I think that's been the attitude of our guys. And I think when you have that selfless attitude, and that's what the message I said to the team after the game was, Nana was our leading scorer in the second half, and he didn't. A lot of guys maybe would sulk or pout if they don't start, especially with a player that, Nana's caliber. And he didn't. It was all about the team, and he just wanted to win. And it's no secret, there's no magic formula, no secret play for that as a coach, other than if your players believe in that, then it'll show up on the floor, and it did for him in that first half.
Coach Brad Korn joining us, Red Hawks Coaches Show, Wings, etc. in Cape. We'll be at the Jackson location next Monday. The Red Hawks will have another game under their belt. SIU comes to the Show Me Center on Wednesday. So with Nana, you have a conversation with a guy, and you're a first-year head coach. So you bring a guy in, and you have to have a conversation. Here's a guy who's a Big Ten athlete. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of Bolingbrook High School in Bolingbrook, Illinois, up in the Chicago suburbs. Top 150 national prospect, Big Ten athlete, played 2 seasons at the University of Nebraska. And all of a sudden, he gets called in and says, "Sorry, you are not starting for this team." I guess as a coach, you really don't know how a guy will respond. You may think you know how he's going to respond, and it's going to tell you a lot about that individual. What did it say to you when Nana said, "That's fine with me. I just want to win. I want to do what's best for the team"? I understand, Coach, because there are a lot of selfish guys in this sport.
Absolutely. And to me, that was you asked me earlier about what my feelings were before the game. I was actually more nervous about talking to him about that than I was necessarily the game, just because, again, I just didn't want him to think that he had done anything wrong, because he hadn't. But for him to be able to have that attitude, I think it goes back to our staff and what we tried to do since the time you got the job, because even though you think, oh, yeah, those are your players, they should understand. Given COVID and everything else, we haven't been able to be around them as much to be able to build that trust that you normally would have off the court. So we've tried to do that through Zooms and everything else like that. So for him to really be bought into that and to say, as soon as I said that to him, he's like, "Hey, Coach, I trust you." And so to me, that was just, it really felt It felt good. It felt right. And again, it speaks to his character. And I think that set the tone for our team. And I thought it was important to share that to the team the night before so they understood it, because the lineup will probably at some point change again, right? It's just so now are we going to continue with that same attitude and that same mindset as we move forward? And so I was really proud of him. I was proud of our staff. I was proud of the team to accept it and let it not be an issue, because again, at the end of the day, it's all about winning basketball games. And when you win games, then you get the glory. And I think a lot of young people have it, well, I'll score 20 and we'll win. And it's not that way. We'll win and someone will score 20.
So Nana, you look at what he has done coming into this season at the University of Nebraska. Had to sit out last year because of transfer rules, but he had 24 threes as a sophomore at Nebraska, 6th most on the team. What type of a player is Nana? We know he's a Big Ten athlete. What type of a player is he going to be for you?
I think he's going to be a little bit of everything. He can make plays off the bounce. The shots that he made some bombs in that game against KC, but I see him make them in practice, and I see him work on them. Same thing with Nigel Russell we talked about after the game. Nigel had some big shots, but I've seen those guys shoot those shots in practice. So it wasn't to me, it wasn't a fluke, and that's a good defensive team, as we've talked about. So I think Nigel can be, because of what he did and his attitude he had towards that little situation that we had, I shouldn't call it a situation, but just him not starting, to have that attitude and that mindset, I think he can really grow into a leader as well. And he had the most energy of anybody at the beginning of the game in the locker room. He's kind of been an emotional leader for us to get practices started and talking and being vocal. So I really think, basketball-wise, I don't worry about Nana on basketball, because he puts in the work, he puts in the effort. As you mentioned, he's a great athlete. He can really make shots. We'd like to be able to maybe grow his game to where he can be a little bit of that playmaker, that mismatch, that 3-4 type guy, that hybrid type player offensively and defensively, because he is such a great athlete.
So you look at what happened down the stretch, and a young team, first game under a new head coach. The team across the way has a lot of returning guys from a team that won 16 games a year ago. Getting towards the tail end of the second half, you've got a 10-point lead. Here come the Roos. They cut it to 1. You've got a possession. I said on the radio, we're going to find out with this team, are they able to close? Let's see if they can close this thing. So it's a 1-point game, and then all of a sudden Nigel Russell rises up and sticks a three-pointer. I think that was bigger than the one he hit with 2 seconds left in my mind, because you guys needed a bucket in the worst way when they cut it to 1. Rises up, hits that shot, and then with 2 seconds to go, Nigel does it again, hits the 3. Game over when he hits that shot, because you're up 5 with 2 seconds to go. They're not going to come back. Tell us about the way that you close, and tell us about Nigel Russell. Some guys want the ball late. Other guys, where are they? They don't want the ball late. Mm-hmm. Tell us about Nigel, his mentality, because we've had him on the show. This is his 3rd year. I think he's the most veteran player on the team. And then tell us about the fact about him wanting to make those shots and making those shots.
Yeah, well, just before I came over for the show, he was already in the gym shooting. And so we had said afterwards, he's prepared himself for that moment. So it's that old saying, the bright lights don't reveal who you are. It shows what you've done in the darkness. And Nigel is that guy. He's put in a ton of work. He's been here over the summer and just constantly working on his game. And really all the guys, they've put in work. And he's that guy. But to me, again, it was more so that the trust to be able to pass it to him. We talked about some guys in college basketball or in general, they wouldn't give that ball up. They'd have just shot a terrible shot on their own because I'll make the play. And I don't even remember who it was that passed it to him. But
for the last one, I think it was Harris.
Yeah, and who was the leading scorer? And so it's like, well, he was able to give the ball up, and Nigel stepped up and made the shot, which ended up being the dagger. But even the one before that, Nigel has a ton of confidence in himself. But again, it's because of the work that he's put in. He doesn't just shoot a shot, hope it goes in. And he's put in the work. So when those opportunities come, it's not a surprise for him.
And not only work on the floor, but work in the classroom. Nigel Russell is a scholar athlete at Southeast.
Yeah, he and really all the guys have done a phenomenal job, even going into a year ago during COVID and shifting to online and transition and everything else. So there was a great foundation in place academically, and Miss Brooke does a phenomenal job with our guys. But they've been committed to that side of it as well. The whole thing, you can't play if you don't go to class, and so they do a great job. Nigel, Chris Harris are phenomenal students, 3 points and above. So we don't have to worry about them in the classroom, which obviously I tell the guys all the time. They've been a very mature group. We tell them something once, and they're able to do it and execute it. We don't have to stand over them and babysit them. And so now we can really, they've made my transition to be a first-time head coach so easy and seamless. I tell them all the time that I appreciate them for that, because we don't have to spend a ton of time doing babysitting stuff. They're here to get their degree. They're here to play basketball. We're here to coach them and lead them and grow them as people and players. And they've allowed us to just do that. And we don't have to worry about all the nonsense that can come with it, with some bad kids and bad environments. And we don't have that.
Speaking of babysitting, one of your assistant coaches is going to be looking for a babysitter. Coach.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, we've got quite a crew. Coach Pick has got 4. Coach McMahon and his wife Holly just had their daughter. It was Friday morning. I get confused because it was 5:30 in the morning, so I'm trying to put my days together. But so he didn't make the trip to KC. But Coach Sam, we've got a video that we can't show. He was in the hospital watching and going crazy. So I love the staff. They love me. We love being at SEMO, and I think that's why we've been able to just go and do the job that we're supposed to do and not have any distractions from that. But special congrats to Sam and Holly.
That's Coach Brad Korn. It's the Red Hawks Coaches Show at Wings, etc. Let's take a timeout. When we come back, we'll continue to recap the Red Hawks' big win at the University of Avila against the Kansas City Roos, and we'll talk a little bit about Coach Korn's alma mater. SIU Salukis come to the Show Me Center on Wednesday night. It's the Red Hawks Coaches Show from Wings, etc. in Cape. Glad you joined us. We're here with head coach Brad Korn. Don't forget, Wings, etc., the place to be. They have a full menu of their freshly made burgers, wraps, subs, quesadillas, entree salads, smoked ribs, and much more. And don't forget their ultimate nachos as part of their appetizer lineup. Their daily half-pound lunch specials start at just $7.99 at Wings Etc. And just a scheduling note, we will be in Jackson at the Wings Etc. next Monday at 12 noon for the Redhawks Coaches Show. SEMO wins its debut under Coach Brad Korn, 71-66 over the Kansas City Roos. And, Coach, we talked a little bit about what Nana Kenton was able to do. Chris Harris, a guy that showed that he would step up and take that last shot. I only played in 2 games last year, but he scored 15 at Vandy and then scored 16, including the game-winning three-pointer with 29 seconds left here last year to beat Fort Wayne. And then he went down with a knee injury. I noticed that he did not have a sleeve on that knee yesterday. Yeah. Talk about his rehab, and is he close to 100% because he looked awfully good on Saturday?
Yeah, he is back to 100%, and he actually got cleared to not have to wear his brace probably maybe a month and a half ago, I think it was. But he did a lot. Again, you talk about the situation that we're in as far as, you know, the season ends, he had the injury, he has the surgery, and he's out, and then he goes home, and we're in COVID, and then there's no coming back to campus. So for his rehabilitation and everything else that he had to get done, really on his own back home. Now, Miss Amanda set some stuff up for his PT people back home in the Chicago area. And if he wouldn't have done or taken the steps that he needed to in order to get himself back to where he is now, then obviously he wouldn't have been able to play the way that he did. And Chris is a great offensive player. The thing that probably surprised me the most about him was just how he's able to make his passing and understanding of the game when he has the ball in his hands. Because I think sometimes when you're a shooter or a shot maker, you're not necessarily a passer. And he is a willing passer, as we talked about. Made the extra pass to Nigel at the end of the game. He made a beautiful pass to Nolan Taylor late when we really needed a bucket, and Nolan goes 6 for 6 from the free throw line. So to be able to make those plays, and again, a lot of times scorers and shooters don't necessarily can also be playmakers. And I think Chris is one of those guys that can do both.
Nolan Taylor, your post player, 6'7", 260 pounds. And he's had an interesting circuitous route to come to Cape Girardeau. 2 years at Pepperdine and an injury. Then he goes to Cal Poly, plays well, another injury, gets his degree, and is able to transfer as a grad transfer, and he comes to Southeast Missouri State, his third Division I school. His debut for you, 10 points, 7 rebounds, and maybe more impressive than anything, 6 for 6 from the free throw line. 260-pound post players generally, and it's not always the case, but usually the case, are not accomplished free throw shooters. He looked awfully good on Saturday. He
did, and I got to give him a lot of credit because he's done a lot of stuff on his own to keep himself and to get himself back into shape because, as you mentioned, with those injuries, and 6'7", 260 probably was from his freshman year. 4 years later, I'm not sure those are still the same. But he's done a tremendous job of, one morning we come into the office and he was over at the rec on the elliptical, in a hooded sweatshirt, burning some extra calories and trying to find a unique way to do it because he can't just run all the time with his injury. So it wasn't like he could run himself back into shape. So he's doing other things and doing it on his own, especially during our shutdowns or our pauses. And when he was transitioning from California over here because they were on trimester, so he went much later into the summer still in California, so he doesn't get back home until late into the summer. And so he's done a lot of stuff just on his own, just with his body, and he's very mature. He's very schooled in all areas of life, really, just not just basketball. And the thing that probably impressed me more than just his stat line was he started to become more vocal. And we talk about leadership with Nana, and he's a guy that's been around, as you mentioned. He's been everywhere. I might be his 4th head coach, I think, because in those transitions he's had other head coaches. So I know that was important for him in the recruiting process. Him and his family, they were a little bit apprehensive about myself, just being a first-time head coach. It's like, do you want to go into that situation? And he's like, are you guys trying to win, or are you just building it up for in the future? And so he had all those questions going on in the recruiting process. And I think he knew at the end of the day, well, that we could have this type of a team. He could have that type of a season. He didn't want to waste his last year and just go somewhere where they're just playing for 5 years down the road. And I think that he's done that and shown that just with the way that he's prepared his body and to get it to be the best that it can be each and every day. Because hopefully as this goes, he's going to continue to get better and better. Because he has a soft touch, he's got great hands. He's got a little name for his jump shot that he calls his jumper, so he thinks he can really.
We got to hear the name.
Maria.
Maria.
Yeah.
All right.
Miss Maria. So
When we get him on the show, we're going to ask him about Maria.
He'll start laughing. He'll start laughing. He knows, because anytime he misses a jump shot, I ask him where she's at. So, but he's a great kid, big smile, big personality. So it's nice to see him in the game, though, and during timeouts, he was keeping everybody together, and we need that. You know, we need it from everybody.
4 head coaches, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're the only one that's taller than he is.
Probably. I think he was with Coach Romar, Coach Lorenzo Romar. I'm not sure at Pepperdine. I'm not sure how tall he is, but he's got some size on him.
So Nolan Taylor has a nice evening. Darius Agnew was not available for you, so you go to the bench, bring in Nate Johnson. Johnson did not attempt a shot, but he grabbed 4 rebounds while he was in the basketball game and handed out a couple of assists while he was in there.
Yeah, and I thought Nate played a fantastic game. I really was unsure. He goes up against Nolan every day in practice, and Nolan is massive. And so sometimes Nate's had some tough days in practice, just defensively. So I was a little bit worried about that. But the thing about Nate is Nate has a great spirit. He's a great kid. He has a great spirit. A lot of times with big guys, they play basketball because they're big. They don't necessarily play because they love basketball. Nate loves basketball, and he likes to compete, and he likes to get challenged, and he always bounces back. You know, if he gets knocked down one day in practice, he'll come back the next day, and he'll play hard, and he'll go hard. So I was happy to see him have a good game. And there's one play in particular. We talk about ball screen coverages, and we were flat when he was struggling with it in practice, and then we get into the game, and one of his steals, he did it textbook, and then they threw it right to him. And actually, when he got the steal, you could see him on film. He was clapping for himself as he was transitioning down the other end. So he's that type of a kid, and I'm glad you have those types of kids in your program because he's got some good size, and I think the best basketball for him is down the line. But he's going to be a good player for us.
Now, Red Hawk fans are familiar with Darius Agnew. He was not available. Can we have an update on Darius, and when do you think he might be out there on the floor for you?
Yeah, we could have put Darius in the game, but again, it was somewhat of a similar situation with Nana. He had just come back from some injury. And so, again, he had only practiced 3 times, a little bit sore. So it's like, hey, we'll just see how the game goes. And then Nolan was doing well. Nate gave us good minutes. So we just kind of just left it there. We even tried Dylan Branson. They went super small. So then we tried to go with Dylan. We could have played Darius. And Darius has had a great attitude. He's an intelligent basketball player. He's very smart offensively. Knows exactly what we're trying to do. He's been very encouraging to the guys in practice, getting them going when we've hit our lulls. So I think he's just got to get healthy and just get some more reps under him before we just throw him out there in that game.
So you've also got a post player named Manny Patterson who transferred from Green Bay, and he's 6'8", 220, Coach, and I know that you guys are hoping that there's a chance the NCAA may make him eligible this year. If not, then he'll be eligible next year. Right.
And we're kind of going through that process, and everybody's situation is different. I know everybody in the country seems to be getting waivers and able to play right away, and we'll kind of see where that's at. He actually broke his hand, so he's been out for a month and a half now, which will be a month and a half, and hopefully we get him out of the cast tomorrow. But Manny is he's
a ways away, even if he got cleared then.
Not necessarily, because Manny's trying to find the right words for him, but he's our spiritual, our emotional, our vocal. He's always talking. Like Manny just brings a ton of energy every single day. So why I'm saying that is, most guys that are injured and hurt, they just sit on the side or they do some stuff that they can do. So if let's say that he's on red for that day in practice. Anytime his team is in the drill and anytime they're moving, he's on the other court or he's on the sideline running the same amount that they run. And that wasn't even something that maybe Miss Amanda did on the side or Coach Brew, our strength coach, did with him. I think it's more just who he is and how he's wired. So he won't have any conditioning issues when he comes back. So he's been on the sideline running every single time. If his team loses a drill and they got to run touches, he's out there running the touches with them. And he's talking to them and encouraging them and challenging them. And so he'll go to the doctor again tomorrow with his follow-up, and if he's clear to go, I wouldn't see him having any issues being able to come jump in and play right away outside of just knowing exactly what we're doing because he hasn't been on the offensive side as far as running plays and things like that. But if he gets cleared and from the docs and he gets cleared from the NCAA, I wouldn't see any issues with him being able to jump in there right away and giving us a lift.
So Manny Patterson's a senior, so he's a veteran, experienced guy. And I know it's tough to be a leader when you're not playing.
Yeah.
It's just really tough. But it sounds like he's as close to being a leader not playing as you could probably be, right?
Yeah, and he's a leader just because a lot of those guys, you talk, but then your actions don't follow it up. And Manny's one of those guys that he does both. He talks the talk and he walks the walk, or however you want to spin that if I mess that up. But
no, you got it right.
Whatever he says, he does. And so people will follow that even if you're hurt, because even up until he got hurt, he had done it. You know, he had said, hey, this is it. I go hard every single time. He talks on defense. He only cares about winning. He loves defense. He's tough. He's physical. So all those things, I think the guys, they follow that because they know it's real, because he's been very, very consistent in his approach.
So you shoot 49% from the field in the basketball game, and you go 10 of 23 from three-point range. I'm not saying you're going to hit 10 threes every game. That's probably not realistic, but are you going to be a pretty good three-point shooting team? Do you feel that you've got the shooters to be? Because in the game, the way it's evolved now, you got to be able to shoot threes.
Yeah, obviously, anytime you can shoot like that, you're taking it. And I think that the guy, like as I mentioned before, as long as you continue to put in the work, you'll get the results. And Nana has put in the work. Nigel's put in the work. Chris Harris has put in the work. And even DQ, anytime DQ shoots it, I don't think that I think it's a good shot. He's a really good catch-and-shoot guy. Eric Reid didn't have a great game. He was in foul trouble, and obviously his first Division I game. But Eric Reid can really make shots. And so when you look at the roster and the shooting abilities, I don't feel like when a guy shoots it, I don't cringe. You know, I'm more surprised when they miss, and that's a great feeling. So it's making sure that we're getting the right shots. You know, I don't think anybody can just go on their own and make a play and shoot a shot. As long as we're getting the right shots, I feel good about our guys shooting the basketball.
You know, it was interesting. In the first half, Josiah Alec got hot, and then he got in foul trouble. Then they bring in the 6'10 kid who transferred from Oklahoma State. He got hot. Neither one of those guys were factors in the second half. In the second half, they were taking the ball to the rim, and they got there a lot. What are your thoughts on the way that they were able to get the ball to the rim in the second half? Obviously, they couldn't finish as much as they needed to, or else they would have won the basketball game. But in the second half, it seemed like they changed their approach and were taking the ball to the rim, and they got there a lot.
They did. And during one of those timeouts, we told the guys, like, hey, look, you guys understand what's happened here. This has shifted. They're just going smash mouth basketball when they just went to the block. We messed up a couple defensive assignments, which happens.
Sure.
And that's going to be a problem if it continues to happen. But I think some of that was fatigue, quite honestly. Now, I'm not making excuses, but, again, no game reps or anything like that, and a lot of guys coming back for the first time to live action. So I think some of that was just natural fatigue and mental fatigue. But, yeah, we have got to do a better job of protecting the paint, especially late in the second half when you get a little bit tired. But they did. They just went. They put their head down and got to the rim. I know that at one point I believe the foul count was 8-2, and then right during that he called timeout, and then it went 8-6 pretty quick. So I think that was kind of his point of emphasis to his guys, like, okay, this is where we're going. And we've got to do a better job to show some more resistance, especially around the rim.
Last year, the most free throws the Red Hawks ever shot in a game was against SIU Edwardsville. They shot 36 free throws. In your first game, you got to the line 35 times. And I know you'd like to have made more than the 21 that you made. You missed 14 free throws, but you got to the line 35 times. I mean, you got to love that.
Yeah. It was. It really didn't even, for some reason, it didn't feel like that, Eric. During the game, it didn't feel like, oh man, we're just living at the foul line. Now, in the second half, like I said, we had got to 8 fouls pretty quickly.
Yep.
And so during one of the timeouts, I can't remember if it was Coach Yoder, Coach Prock, or Coach Pick that said, hey, we got 7-8 fouls here, fellas. Stay aggressive. Stay aggressive, under control. But again, as a defense, you now have to take a step back a little bit because you're not going to just put a team at the line with however much time was left on the clock. I don't exactly remember, but that we did make that a point of emphasis in one of the timeouts to continue to stay aggressive and to be strong, and it obviously paid off. If we'd have made a little bit more, who knows? Like as you mentioned, we were up 10 with 5 minutes to go, so we got to do a little bit better job of closing that. But all in all, pretty positive.
The guy you want at the line, it's looking like it's Nolan Taylor, but of course is DQ Nicholas. So he was 14th in the OVC in free throw percentage last year, 4 for 4 in this game. He's an excellent free throw shooter. And I thought that DQ didn't force anything on Saturday. I mean, only attempted 3 shots, went 2 for 3, was aggressive, got to the line 4 times, hit all 4 of his free throws. What was your assessment on DQ?
I love DQ. I love his spirit. I love the way that he plays defense. He's fast. He's athletic. I thought he was a little bit disappointed in the game just because of the fouls, and it really didn't let him get into a flow.
He fouled out, by the way, for those who don't know.
Yeah, and he had one really terrible call, and I think they just kind of messed with him late, and then he fouls out. They posted him up, nice little counter they ran, and he fouled out on that play.
Was that the play right in front of us, right in front of you, where they called the foul, and you kind of –
The offensive foul. I thought that was a terrible call.
That was your first face-to-face with an official as a Division I coach.
Yeah, I was always worried about that. I can be, as you know, we can be a little bit quick-tempered. So I was a little worried about that. But I just thought he had the ball, and I'm under the impression that as an offensive player, you're allowed your space. And so just because that guy ran into him, how's an offensive foul? Because he didn't do anything to anybody. We could talk all day about those guys. But, I thought he played a good game, and I think he was just frustrated because he couldn't get into a flow. He fouled, and he was out, and then he sat for a long time. And so I just think that he wanted more consistency with it. But again, I think he's just understanding more and more from that lead PG position of the game and understanding the game and pace and transition. And because he has the tools, he has the ability. And so I think that I thought he played a good game, but again, it just was foul trouble and just was spotty for him. It was just kind of knee-jerk. It was up and down for him a little bit, and I think he was a little bit frustrated with that as well just because of the fouls.
Reid Jr. worked his way into the starting lineup for you, Coach. Only 10 minutes. I mean, just had a bad day in terms of fouls. I mean, it's one of those days where they just, every time you turn around, it's a whistle. He's headed back to the bench.
Yeah.
What kind of a player are we going to see with Reid Jr.? Because we didn't get to see much of him on Saturday.
Yeah, he's that bigger, tougher guy. He plays both sides of the ball. He loves to play defense. His junior college, Howard, they're a tough defensive-minded team, so he comes with that mentality. He's got great parents, very disciplined, all that. So I think he's a guy that people will love because he's going to give effort on every single play. And he just had mentioned after the game, it's just like, hey, I was just moving so fast. So even if you come, no matter what, if you haven't been in Division I games, I don't care who you play, it's still a transition. And even though he's a junior college transfer, the speed of the game, and especially as you mentioned with KC being a little bit older and Coach Donlin in the second year, they're running their sets and their actions and their defenses. It's still a little bit more than what you've ever seen before. So I think him was just getting his feet wet. He took a couple shots that he just forced and just shot just to shoot. We turned it over out of a timeout once. It just was I think he was trying to make a basketball play, because I think sometimes you think that you have to make a play to get the team going. And actually the play was to throw it back to Chris Harris because he was wide open at the top of the key. So I think it was more of just a learning curve for him. And people can expect to see him play extremely hard on both sides of the ball.
And Jordan Love finishes 2 for 6 in the game, he had, 4 points in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing with Jordan, a career-high 4 steals in the basketball game. He's quick, Coach, and he is long. Is he a guy that's going to be able to give you steals on a regular basis?
I think so. I think that's his best attribute is his IQ on defense as far as putting himself in the right positions. His instincts are really good as it goes. He's got to get better off the ball. He gave up a couple of those layups just scheme-wise defensively. But I'll tell you, the thing about Jordan was probably the most impressive plays of the night was in the first half early, he got a block. He deflected a shot, as you mentioned, his length. But the best play probably was when we turned it over in the first half. And he was behind about 4 guys, and he sprinted and knocked the ball out of
that was a great play.
Alex hands.
Right.
And prevented the layup.
Because that's 9 times out of 10, that guy is going to score a layup.
Yeah, and he even looked back as he was dribbling and he didn't see anybody, and Jordan, he sprinted. And those are winning plays. That's elite effort, which we talk about all the time. And again, it goes back to what we'd said before about these guys in this group is that they seem to be committed to winning. They seem to be committed to the team. And if you're in your feelings or if you're only worried about yourself, you don't make that play. You just stop running and say, well, he turned it over. And he didn't have that mindset or that attitude. And actually it hit social media a couple weeks back, the Seahawks player, I believe it was. They threw an interception, and he just took off and sprinted.
DK Metcalf, right?
Yeah, it reminded me of that play. And we showed the guys that play. And it's like, this is what it's about. This is what winning is. And so for Jordan to be able to do that, to me, that was probably the biggest moment of the game for him that I saw.
All right, SIU comes to the Show Me Center on Wednesday. We'll talk that over with head coach Brad Korn because, well, wait, he is a Saluki. We'll talk about it with Coach Brad Korn when we come back. It's the Red Hawks Coaches Show. We're at Wings Etc. in Cape Girardeau, and we're on SEMO ESPN Radio. Hey, 12 noon with Coach Brad Korn, and as we get a little later into the schedule, we'll be talking with Red Hawk players as we normally do. The Red Hawks will be hosting SIU Carbondale, and you've got to make that distinction because obviously the Red Hawks have SIU Edwardsville in their conference, but it will be the Salukis coming in here on Wednesday, scheduled for a 6:30 tip-off. Kind of, I would think you got kind of weird emotions coaching against SIU, where you played your basketball 3 years under Bruce Weber, and then your final season under Coach Matt Painter. You got an opportunity to be an assistant coach with the Salukis. Obviously, you coached many years under Bruce Weber and had great success in Kansas State, back-to-back 25-win seasons in Manhattan, Kansas. What are your thoughts? And the first time maybe that you saw, SIU's coming over to the Show Me Center.
Well, I think obviously it's good that it's at home for us. You know, it'd probably be a little more strange if it was going over there and playing. So I'm glad we get them at home. Obviously, it's a storied program. You know, when I was there, we won 6 championships, 3 as a player, 3 as a coach, Sweet 16s. So it's just a lot of success over there. And it's obviously a very storied program and with a lot of pride in history there. So I'm always appreciative of that university and the region and the people and everything that you go to college, you go as a boy and you turn into a man. And I think that place helped me do that. I met my wife there who's here now. And so we're both alums from there. Our first daughter, Breland, was born in Carbondale. So a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings towards that place and those people. And but again, for us, it's a great measuring stick. You know, you want to play those teams. And if you look at our schedule, our non-con is probably a little heavy. But again, it's teams like that you want to play and compete against because that's what we're going to face in the Ohio Valley Conference. So it'll be good to see familiar faces like Mike Reese and other people over there, and Tom Weber, their SID, and just a lot of great people over there. You know, old-time trainer Ed Thompson. So a lot of people over there that are very familiar to me, and I had over 100 text messages after we won the other night. So and a lot of those people are from that region, that area. So it's feel good about those guys as people, but again, at the end of the day, we need SEMO to take care of business on Wednesday.
I was telling you when I went to SIU to college, Rich Herron was a coach, and he was winning lots of championships. And guys like Chris Lowry, who was a point guard and pulled his white socks all the way up to his knee, running the point for Rich Herron, and Ashraf Amaya, who played in the NBA, and Chris Carr played in the NBA, Marcus Timmons, Shane Hawkins, Paul Lusk. I mean, they just ran through a lot of great teams and a lot of great players over there. So the history, the history with SIU. What's your history with Brian Mullins? He's their head coach, former player. I know he has tested positive for COVID. What we understand is he is asymptomatic. That's great news. We understand that Brendan Mullins, his brother, who's an assistant coach, will be the acting head coach on Wednesday. What's your history with Brian Mullins? Because I'm sure you guys were probably there together, right?
Oh, yeah. We were so actually Brian was a part of that first recruiting class, if I'm not mistaken, when Coach Lowry had came. And Brian texted me right after the game, congrats. His dad texted me after the game. Mike Mullins runs the AAU program out of Chicago. And so they've always had that, there's always been that deep respect. Brian's a great person. He's an academic All-American, all-league, defensive guy, tough, hard-nosed. His teams are disciplined. So I don't expect any of that to change. And again, you never know quite what to expect in this year, in this climate. His team was in a little bit of a quarantine as well. As you mentioned, he had tested positive. He told me he feels fine. So it's unfortunate that he's probably not going to coach. But again, at the same time, Brendan will do a good job. Probably the only difference between those two guys is Brendan has a beard and Brian doesn't. They look pretty much the same. So fans may not even know that there's a difference between them if you put them next to each other, other than the beard. So good people, do things the right way. High level of respect for those guys and the way that he runs his program.
Well, last year they had the Missouri Valley Conference Freshman of the Year. His name is Marcus Damask. He was a freshman All-American as well. They also had an outstanding freshman named Lance Jones. Now, they have run into the injury bug just a little bit. J.D. Mula, who was the number 24 junior college transfer in the country, came in, has a season-ending injury, so he will not be able to play. Any chance to get a scouting report on SIU? Because they have not played a game. They had games canceled because of COVID protocol. They were supposed to play in an event in Louisville that never came to fruition. So this is going to be their first basketball game.
Yeah, so first basketball game without the head coach, who has not been at practice as well. So a lot of factors going in. So, again, a lot of unknowns going into it. And they're kind of a new team a little bit as well. A lot of new faces. So they have, as you mentioned, Dom and then their freshman Lance are very – Dom's a very good player. He's a mismatch problem. He plays that 4 spot. But I anticipate with their injuries, as you mentioned, that he'll go down to that 5 and be some small ball. And that's going to be a difficult challenge for us to be able to go on because he's a fantastic player. And then they also have an Eastern Illinois transfer who got 26 on us, if I'm not mistaken, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. So they'll have some firepower. There's always, as you mentioned before too, there's always players over there. So we're going to have to be ready for a little bit. In this year, expect the unexpected. And I think our guys, as long as we take care of ourselves and prepare the right way and practice these next 2 days, we'll be ready to roll on Wednesday.
And Red Hawk fans should be appreciative that the game is not in Carbondale because they are not allowing fans. Right. I mean, as of now, there will be no fans to watch an SIU game at Banterra Bank Center, but there are fans at the Show Me Center. That is a big, big plus. We're less than an hour away, 45 minutes away. It's interesting how no fans there. Fans will be allowed in the Show Me Center.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm excited because we had a little bit of an atmosphere in KC. There were some fans there, but again, it's this year. You got to bring your own energy, but I think now on Wednesday night, we'll have some people come out. They're obviously going to bring some people, and it's going to be a real game atmosphere. Now it wouldn't be as full as it normally would, but it's going to be your first taste of a real kind of atmosphere in basketball game that we haven't had since March.
And if you're an SIU fan, you're probably excited about this game because it's 45 minutes away and you actually can watch the Salukis play because you can't if you're in Carbondale.
Right. And I think they will come. This has always been a well-attended game and on both sides. And so I think you'll see that. And hopefully both teams come out and play and compete and do it the right way. And at the end of the day, as long as the Red Hawks win, that's all that matters.
All right. That's going to be 6:30 on Wednesday. And don't forget, we will be back at Wings Etc. in Jackson next Monday at 12 noon. Coach, thanks so much. We'll see you over at the Show Me Center on Wednesday. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
That is head coach Brad Korn. And that will do it for the Red Hawks Coaches Show. Don't forget, 6:30 will be the tip-off at the Show Me Center on Wednesday. The Salukis will be in town. We'll talk to you then. We'll get you back into regular programming on ESPN Radio. Stay tuned. We've got who do we have coming up? Max Kellerman Show coming up on ESPN Radio. We say so long, everybody, from Wings, etc., and the